family drama over hospital lunches, and one spoiled sister. Ever had your sister steal your bike and dump it in a pond as a prank? Listen up. I work just a few blocks from a hospital, and I often ride my bike there for lunch. Their cafeteria is quaint and affordable, so about once a week, I go there to eat. The food isn't amazing, but there's a decent variety, and the staff always greet me warmly. It's much quieter than any local restaurant, which is a huge plus since I'm on the spectrum and dislike loud noises. Recently, my sister discovered I've been eating at the hospital cafeteria and launched into a tirade, insisting that those cafeterias are meant only for patients and visitors. I argued that I'm just supporting the business, and I'm paying for my food. It's not like I'm depriving patients of a meal. I only go once a week, so what's the issue? Yet she remained adamant that I'm in the wrong. Then she involved our parents, and now they're on her side, saying I should only eat there if I actually need to be at the hospital. I told them they're completely off base. It's just a place to buy a meal. Now, with neither side willing to back down, I'm feeling conflicted. Am I the one in the wrong for eating lunch in a hospital cafeteria once a week, simply because it's convenient? This situation was absolutely unbelievable. I never imagined my sister would do something like this. Recently, I, 23M, posted on Reddit for advice because my parents and sister were upset with me for regularly eating at a nearby hospital cafeteria. I enjoy it for its quiet atmosphere, which is perfect for me since I work nearby and appreciate a calm lunch spot. But things escalated so dramatically that I still can't believe it happened. When my sister found out about my lunches, she became very upset, insisting that hospital cafeterias are meant only for patients and visitors. We had a heated argument. I explained I was merely supporting the business by paying for my own meal. Then, as usual, she went to our parents, who immediately sided with her, claiming that eating there casually was inappropriate. They spent several days insisting that I was wrong and demanded I stop. So, I turned to Reddit and learned that many people actually enjoy eating at hospital cafeterias. I hoped the issue would fade, but a few days later, my sister called to ask if I had stopped, and I said no. This only made my parents more upset, and they called me, demanding I change my habits because they believed they had the right to decide for me, even though I no longer live with them. They always seemed to side with my sister. Then the dispute spread further. My sister even tried to gain support from other relatives, but our parents remained her only allies. My uncle eventually scolded our parents and my sister over the phone, saying they were only siding with her because she's their favorite, and that their favoritism was unfair. To add fuel to the fire, a cousin joined me for lunch at the hospital cafeteria, saying he'd like to come there once a week as well, since he works nearby and rides his bike. He appreciated that the food was healthier than most other places, and this made my sister even more upset when she learned another family member was enjoying the cafeteria. Eventually, my parents, embarrassed by the situation, apologized to me and admitted they thought eating at a hospital cafeteria was strange and felt compelled to defend my sister. I told them that they have always sided with her when conflicts arise, treating me unfairly, and that I would no longer tolerate it. They eventually made my sister apologize to me, though she clearly wasn't happy about it. Later, my parents hosted a family dinner as a public apology. The dinner was lovely. My parents cooked a delicious turkey with drumsticks smothered in gravy, one of my favorites. My sister laughed throughout the meal, which I usually enjoy, so I didn't think much of it at first. However, after dinner, I noticed my bicycle, my only mode of transportation, was missing from the backyard, where I had parked it safely. I panicked, and while my parents were understandably concerned, my sister oddly appeared cheerful and even giggled. I immediately suspected her, and she pretended to be innocent, exclaiming, "I can't believe you'd think I'd do that." I already knew she could be quite petty, but this was a new level. I told her I was going to check with our neighbor, who has security cameras, and then I would call the police if necessary. Suddenly, my sister looked extremely anxious, and I grew angry, insisting that I knew it was her and demanding that she return my bicycle immediately. She began to cry and claim she hadn't done anything wrong, while our parents quickly took her side and scolded me for accusing her. At that point, I had enough. I said I would go to our neighbors to check the cameras and then call the authorities. My sister eventually admitted and called me back. The expressions on our parents' faces after defending her were unforgettable. My sister then complained that she was furious with me for making her apologize for something she still believed was right. She admitted that she had planned to have some friends come and take my bike as a prank, explaining that her friends were waiting in a minivan just down the street. Then she insisted that I couldn't call the police on her because I'm her older brother, and our parents agreed. But I pulled out my phone and marched outside again. They chased after me as my sister pleaded and cried for me to stop. I told her in no uncertain terms that I couldn't believe our parents were still defending her behavior. Finally, our parents reached their limit and told her to have her friends return my bicycle immediately. She called her friends on her phone while sniffling, then ran into her room to speak with them quietly. I couldn't hear what she said, and our parents looked very concerned. My sister never willingly admitted to taking my bicycle, she just kept repeating that it was only a prank, insisting that it was just a cheap bike anyway even though I bought it used for $50 and it's in excellent condition. It's my main way of getting around. She kept looking to our parents for support, and this time, they couldn't back her up. In the end, she slumped down in a chair, hugging her knees, waiting with the rest of us, increasingly nervous as her friends took longer to return my bicycle. This entire episode has been incredibly upsetting, and I still can't believe how petty things got. Even though my sister said her friends were just down the street, it took them nearly an hour to bring my bike back. They finally pulled up in a minivan with my bike crammed in the back and it was completely soaked and covered in mud, as if it had been dragged out of a muddy ditch. My bike is a 700C, too tall for them to ride, so they simply drove up and took it by dragging it into the van as quickly as possible. I believe they took it because I was almost certain my sister had told them to dispose of my bike. Had I not mentioned that our neighbors have security cameras, I might not have gotten it back. When her friends finally arrived, their legs were muddy and wet nearly to the knees. They both pleaded with me not to report them to the police for taking the bike. I recorded them and asked them to tell the truth, pointing out that the neighbors have cameras. They eventually broke down and admitted that, yes, my sister wanted them to take the bike and dump it in a pond a few miles away. They had to go back and retrieve it when they realized they were caught. My bike was nearly completely submerged in muddy water. Fortunately, I didn't have many accessories on, only a detachable headlight and my water bottle, though the water bottle was missing. I wasn't surprised by what her friends told me, and I made sure our parents heard it too. They scolded my sister until she was sobbing on the floor, kicking and pounding like a small child. I had never seen her act that way since she was really little, and it was mortifying that she still behaved so immaturely. Then she locked herself in her room, and her friends were banned from our parents' house forever. Later, our mother forced her to come out and issue another sincere apology to me. Our father then required her to wash and oil my bike completely under his supervision while I disassembled the headlight and cleaned it to dry. By the time she was finished, it was dark outside. When she returned to the house, she glared at me as if I were the worst person, but our parents immediately shut down her attitude, saying they had never been more embarrassed by her. She returned to crying in her room. I had a frank discussion with our parents about my sister's immature behavior and how it stemmed from their overindulgence. I told them I couldn't believe I had to be the voice of reason every time she acted out, and that she rarely learns accountability. For once, they did not argue with me. Then, my father quietly drove me and my bike back to my apartment in his SUV and even gave me some money to replace my bike's missing water bottle. My sister and her group used to tease me whenever we met, but after the bike incident, I received numerous messages from unknown numbers criticizing me for making her cry over what they called a silly prank. I later explained what really happened and I even have recordings of her friends admitting the truth. Some people at my sister's college learned about the incident, and it embarrassed her so much she came home having a crying tantrum, saying that people there were calling her and her friends bike thieves. I know that students who rely on their bikes are very protective of them, so this hit her hard. She ended up so upset that she refused to leave her room for 3 days. Then my parents called, trying to blame me once again. I reminded them of our recent discussion and told them they needed to stop treating her like a child and let her face the consequences of her actions. I made it clear that I would no longer be the scapegoat. My sister is an adult and must act accordingly. They eventually sounded defeated and apologized before ending the call. It seems they were hoping I would simply accept the blame, but I will not do that again. Now, my parents are trying to pretend this never happened, and my sister and her friends are avoiding me completely, which is fine by me. However, the next time something like this occurs, I will not tolerate it. Final update. To start things off, yes, my bike is fine. I managed to prevent any rust or damage after my sister had it dumped in a pond. It wasn't new anyway, and there were no unusual creaks or groans. I was worried something might go wrong, but it's a simple single-speed bike that works perfectly after being oiled. I re-greased the crank bearings, and I had already changed the rear tube and tire a few months ago. I still ride it everywhere. Now, regarding my difficult sister, she barely managed to pass college, and she even tried to blame her low grades on me and the distress from the bike incident multiple times. Eventually, even our parents put an end to that, reaching their limit and enforcing consequences for her behavior. They made her stay in her room to study whenever she had a pity party or tantrum, threatening to cut off the Wi-Fi and phone if she didn't complete her homework. Although she cried and protested, she eventually complied and graduated. Though her graduation celebration was not very joyful since she ended up with no close friends, her former clique had abandoned her because of her behavior. As an ironic consequence, our parents started making my sister ride a bicycle to get around. She disliked it more than she disliked taking the bus. Our dad even bought her a used cruiser bike, and our parents practically begged me to take her out on weekend rides to get her out of the house for a few hours, and I did. Mostly because they asked so politely and offered dinner. The last time we talked about it, my sister still firmly believed that eating at the hospital cafeteria was wrong, although she couldn't justify her stance when asked by anyone. In fact, no one supported her position anymore. Even our parents admitted that they no longer find it unusual after learning that the cafeteria is a separate business from the hospital. In fact, they joined me for family lunches at the hospital a few times and even insisted that my sister come along. She appeared very uneasy and openly said she couldn't believe they made her eat there when it conflicted with her beliefs. She even phrased it as if it were a matter of religion. She was promptly told to behave maturely, but instead, she just cried, clinging to her so-called beliefs because admitting she was mistaken was too difficult. I sometimes wondered if she was not just a spoiled and controlling child, though I am not a professional to diagnose anyone. My sister's group of friends eventually abandoned her as well, especially after two of them were involved in her plan to take my bike and dump it. When word got out, they all distanced themselves to protect their own reputations, placing all the blame on my sister. Although I did not file a police report, the two girls who took my bike faced serious consequences with their families. Regarding the minivan they used, it turned out it was borrowed from one of their parents, who stopped lending it after learning what had occurred. The parents even visited me to apologize on behalf of their daughter and asked for a copy of the video I recorded, which I provided. In the end, my sister learned what it feels like to be made the scapegoat. She was also ridiculed for having to ride a bike to and from college. Her parents decided it was more economical than taking the bus and she lost her carpool friends. And to be clear, her bike was never stolen or vandalized, she simply disliked it. Our dad also insisted she learn to fix and maintain her bike herself. He used to work on bikes in his youth and still has the necessary tools, so he can handle bike repairs even though he no longer rides them. He even taught me the basics. For those who predicted that my sister might retaliate even more strongly against me, she did not. She remains bitter, and while she has started counseling which has helped her somewhat, any real change might take years. At least now, she no longer tries to boss me around. I've been invited to dinner by our parents several times since my last update, and my sister barely speaks to me at the table. Everyone, including our parents, has told her that she ruined her own reputation, yet she still tries to place the blame on me because she needs someone to fault. I have also chained and locked my bike whenever I visit home after the prank, just to be safe. After my sister finished college, our parents suddenly announced that she was moving out of their house. Although she did not want to, they forced her to get a job immediately and find an apartment. They said her party days were over and it was time for her to learn about adult life. Several relatives told our parents that she wouldn't truly grow up until she lived on her own and paid her own bills. Our parents debated it for a while, as she was clearly their favorite, but ultimately, my sister had to face the consequences. She is still unhappy about it because she loved being spoiled, but she cannot blame me for that decision. However, she did have several "it was just a bike" tantrums when trying to blame me for her college troubles. Our mother once lightly tapped her on the head and told her to stop acting as if I were the cause of all her problems. And it wasn't just a bike to me, it's practically my livelihood since it's my primary mode of transportation. Currently, my sister shares a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other girls. She had to move further away so that her reputation wouldn't follow her when she started a job. Our mother was very upset about that. My sister is working in an office and learning to be a secretary, yet she complains about hating her current life and boasts about what she will do when she earns more than me. I simply told her, "You do you," which upset her further because I didn't engage with her taunts. She does not like her roommates and still has to ride the bike our father provided, as her commute is only a few miles. Walking is too slow, and she doesn't spend money on the bus. She practically demanded that our parents buy her a car since they kicked her out of the house, but they refused. That caused her to stop speaking with them for a while. It's obvious that my sister and I no longer go on bike rides together. That stopped as soon as she moved out. While we were still enjoying weekend rides together, she tried several immature jabs at me, which I mostly ignored. She would sometimes call me insensitive or roll her eyes. One of her repeated remarks was that her bike is better than mine because it has gears, but she could never outpace me. It seemed she was determined to make me appear as the loser so she wouldn't feel inferior. My sister clearly wants a car, but she cannot afford one on her own because she struggles with saving money. She wanted our parents to buy her an electric bike for Christmas, but they refused after considering the cost. She has already cost them a lot of money, as they covered all 3 years of her college expenses. As a light-hearted gesture at Christmas, I gave her new tires for her bike, which earned me a disapproving look. Our parents also had to assist her financially a couple of times in 2024 due to her poor financial management. Despite how much she has been affected by the realities of adult life, she still acts like a spoiled child in denial. Otherwise, she is managing, although she often resents me for living alone while she must have roommates to afford rent. I have met her roommates, and they seem to like me, which further upset my sister because they do not submit to her demands as our parents once did. She really dislikes it when people do not do what she wants, so it must be challenging for her to live with individuals who set boundaries. That about sums up everything to date. Next story. After 13 years of marriage, my wife and I hit a crossroad. She only wants Disney World trips, and I'm desperate for something new. But then, things got more complicated. Here's the shocking twist in our relationship story. My wife Jess and I have been married for the past 13 years. We're both 39. After experiencing financial hardship throughout our 20s and early 30s, Jess and I are now fortunate enough to have the means to travel once or twice a year. The only problem is that Jess literally only wants to go to Disney World. We have been to Disney 9 times now, and every vacation we have ever taken together was to go there, including our honeymoon. So we go, we eat the Mickey Mouse ice cream, we wear the mouse ears, we stay in the official hotels, we see the characters, we ride the rides, we take the pictures in front of Cinderella's castle. And we come home. Every trip. I'm honestly beyond sick of Disney, and I never really liked going in the first place. Jess knows this, but she has no concept of travel beyond Disney. We're currently planning a trip for April, and Jess, as usual, said that we can just go to Disney. I explained that it sounds fun, but hey, why don't we go somewhere like Hawaii this time? Jess was confused. She asked why we would go to Hawaii. I responded that we could enjoy the spas and go to the beach. Jess mumbled a half-hearted answer and walked away. A few days later, she approached me, saying that she made hotel reservations for Hawaii. At first, I was excited because although she did so without consulting me, it seemed like she was really listening. But then when she showed me the hotel she booked, I found she had made reservations for Aulani, the Disney resort in Hawaii. Frustrated, I told her that I'm honestly tired of Disney, and that I just want to have a different experience this time. She told me that she was compromising with me, and that I should be appreciative for the time she spent. I asked her if she was willing to consider anything other than Disney for our trip, and she said no. At this point, I said that I wasn't going. Now she's furious. She canceled the reservation she made, and now she's looking for a friend to go to Disney World with again without me. Update. I screwed up. I know most people were giving me the NTA judgment, but Jess actually showed a great deal of openness to my idea. She took initiative by reserving the hotel because she wanted me to be happy. When I said nope, no Disney, she felt that I hadn't put any effort into taking her feelings into consideration. And she was completely right. I hadn't. It was, in a twisted way, my form of revenge for dragging me to Disney World all those times. In the last post, some people commented about how Aulani barely even looks like a Disney resort at all. This is something I should have researched myself before I threw the gauntlet down with Jess. When I looked into it, it looks like a run-of-the-mill Hawaiian resort. In my defense, going to Disney World 9 times has kind of made me sensitive, and I'm fairly sure that on a Rorschach test I'd see nothing but mouse ears at this point. But I really should not have jumped to conclusions. A day after I made the post, I approached Jess and apologized. I was wrong. Yes, she might be a Disney adult, but aside from always wanting to go to their theme parks, she's never obnoxious about it. I said I was sorry, and asked for permission to reserve the hotel again. And Jess responded that she'd love to go to Aulani with me. When I told her that it's not really all that Disney, Jess said, "Of course I knew that. I wanted to go because my sister said it was beautiful." Jess and I have replanned our vacation, and we're super excited to be going now. I came to this realization because a lot of people pointed out some things I should have figured out myself. Thank you. Update number 2. I decided not to travel because my wife made reservations for Disney again. The 5th of January, 2025, nearly 3 weeks later. Hi again everybody. This situation all started because my wife Jess and I had an argument about going to Disney World on vacation again. I didn't want to go because we had already been 9 times, and when I suggested Hawaii, Jess made reservations for Aulani, which is a Disney-owned resort. I immediately rejected this idea, mistakenly believing it was just another Disney vacation. Eventually, I realized that I was wrong, and that Aulani was a perfectly fine compromise. Unfortunately, we will not be going to Aulani for our upcoming vacation. A couple of days after Christmas, Jess had a minor car accident. She mistook drive for reverse and backed into our garage door. When I heard the loud bang, I ran outside, and I found Jess holding her neck in the car. I immediately drove her to the hospital, where she got x-rays done. She seemed fine, but the doctor said that based on her symptoms, headache, neck pain, numbness in her fingers, she could have whiplash. Jess and I figured that she would be fine in a couple of days, but almost 2 weeks later, she is still complaining about back pain. Yesterday, she approached me, saying that she wasn't confident she could go to Hawaii in a few months. I asked what she wanted to do, and while apologizing profusely, she asked me if we could postpone that trip. I responded that she had absolutely nothing to apologize for. After that, she said that she felt bad about not being able to go to Hawaii, but she might be able to make it to Disney World. While I didn't understand at first, she told me that it has very high accessibility and, in a worst-case scenario, ECV rentals. She doubts that will be necessary, but assured me that we could take it easy there. I know that this isn't the conclusion people here wanted, and it's certainly not what I wanted to do with my next vacation, but Jess's health has to come first here. We've made our reservations. It's not where I want to go, but Jess is super happy right now, and that's what matters most to me. Thank you all for your input. Final update. My wife only wants to go to Disney World for our vacations. The 27th of January, 2025. So, long story short, last week Jess overplayed her hand. Even before that, I found her recounting of the car accident and the extent of her injuries suspicious. When she doesn't know I'm watching, she moves normally, will pick things up off the floor, and generally seems perfectly healthy. When she sees me nearby, she exaggerates every movement, holds her lower back, and limps. Well, on Saturday, Jess approached me saying that she wanted to move. This made no sense. We had so little money throughout our 20s and early 30s, and now we're financially well off solely because I finally have an amazing job in our area. Jess said she understood this, but she argued that she wanted to live closer to her parents. She asked me to move to Orlando with her. So, first off, her parents do not live in Orlando. They live in Atlanta, which is smack dab right in between where we currently live in Orlando. Jess cited there being more flight options, and then she tacked on that she may have a job opportunity in Orlando. When I asked her to show me the job, she showed me a $16-hour sales associate position for a sector where she has absolutely zero knowledge and experience. I'm not proud of this, but I snapped. I told her she just wanted to move closer to Disney World, that she was tearing our lives up so she could go take pictures with Disney princesses, and that she was a horrible wife. Jess denied this, naturally, and she told me that she's moving to Orlando with or without me because her parents need her. After this, Jess went to her room and started listening to Disney music with the volume at max, singing along. I listened to her rendition of Let It Go more times than I can count. Maybe, it refers to me here. The next morning, she told me that she was moving to Orlando with or without me, and said that if I want to be a terrible husband, I can just stay where I am. I'm going to just be a terrible husband. I've tried to deny the obvious because it would make Jess happy, but I can't anymore. I just want to be alone.